Welcome back to Views with Hughes, your gender-free news. This is Jerome Hughes. Now, let's go ahead and get right into it. Now, Rings of Power Season 2, a series that people actually believed had so much potential, has instead become a massive disappointment, especially when you look at the numbers as well as the different creative choices made throughout Rings of Power Season 2. Now, I know many of you, like myself, were cautiously optimistic after the first season. Well, actually, I wasn't optimistic at all before the first season started. And there was like a lot of bad reviews. But what we've been given in Rings of Power Season 2 is just the same, is worse than Season 1. It's just a disaster that's hard to overlook. Even the biased Shield media, the same outlets that praised Rings of Power Season 2 for its bold choices and diverse cast, can't even ignore the undeniable drop in numbers. And even they're admitting that now that when media can't find a way to polish the disaster that Rings of Power Season 2 has become, you know it's really bad, okay? Now, if you enjoy what I say in this video, go ahead and smash the like button and share far wide across social media. Now, when the Rings of Power Season 1 premiered, it was watched by 1.8 million U.S. households over the first 4 days. That's an average of 450,000 viewers a day. Now, for a show that had an insane budget of nearly over $1 billion, those numbers were already underwhelming. But it was still hyped up, you know. But fast forward to Rings of Power Season 2, and there were things to go from bad to worse, all right? Only 902,000 U.S. households turned in over the 5 days of Rings of Power Season 2. Now, we can do the math of that. See, 902,000 viewers in 5 days averages a pitiful 800.4K viewers the day of Rings of Power Season 2 was released. Now, here's where it gets even more embarrassing. If you move the 5th day of the viewership and just compare it directly to the first season of Rings of Power and its 4-day period release, Rings of Power Season 2 only averaged 721.6 thousand people per day. That's a 60% drop in viewership for Rings of Power Season 2. Now let that sink in. Amazon spent a fortune on Rings of Power Season 2, as well as Rings of Power as a whole, hyped this show to the moon and lost over half its viewers. You can't spin this into anything other than a total failure for Rings of Power Season 2. Now, as I said, even the biased Shield media, the same outlets that praised Rings of Power Season 2 for its bold choices and diverse cast, can't ignore these numbers. You see, they're admitting it now. When the media can't find a way to polish the disaster that is Rings of Power Season 2, you know that is terrible. Okay, now we're going to also talk about why Rings of Power Season 2 is failing so miserably. But first off, it's basically creatively bankrupt. You know, when Rings of Power Season 1 came out, you know, there was a lot of people that were, you know, giving it a chance. Me, I was when I learned more about it, when I started casting choices. And maybe a lot of people were too optimistic, but by Rings of Power Season 2, it's clearly that they've ran out of ideas, or maybe they never had any, and they've, you know, started blatantly repurposing scenes from Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings trilogy in Rings of Power Season 2. Now, you know, the same trilogy that those showrunners J.D. Payne and Patrick McKay tried to go ahead and distance themselves from when they first started Rings of Power Seasons 1 and 2, and now they're going back to the well because they have nothing else to offer it for Rings of Power Season 2. Now, repurposing iconic moments like the Battle of Helm's Deep for the drama of the Council of Elrond in seasons 1 and 2 doesn't work when your story is weak. Now, they're hoping that by mimicking what worked in Peter Jackson's films for Rings of Power, let alone Rings of Power Season 2, they can somehow trick viewers into thinking Rings of Power Season 2 is on the same level. But spoiler alert, it's not. It's cheap fan fiction dressed up in a $1 billion budget, and viewers aren't fooled by the Rings of Power Season 2. Now, this brings us to the questionable decisions made by the showrunners Payne and McKay, okay, in Rings of Power Season 2. But let's be honest here. These two are out of their depth, okay? They took the beloved Tolkien material and just went in there and twisted it into something unrecognizable for Rings of Power Season 2. Instead of adapting the source material faithfully, they've inserted their own personal fan fiction into Rings of Power Season 2. And you know what? It's like they took the skeleton of Tolkien's world and dressed it up in modern day Hollywood trends for Rings of Power Season 2, completely disregarding once again what made the original story so beloved. And that's not surprising for any of us. But for instance, they went on ahead and it's like they cherry picked events from the books and rearranged them to fit their narrative, their own narrative in Rings of Power Season 2 with little respect for the lore. And the result, a mess of disjointed storylines in Rings of Power Season 2 that have no real connection to the themes or the lore of the tone of Tolkien's work. It's basically generic fantasy world that just, happens to share a few names with Tolkien's universe in the Rings of Power Season 2, and fans see right through it. And let's not forget, they don't have the full rights to it, just a few pages of the appendages. But there's also, character development, or more accurately, the lack of it in Rings of Power Season 2. You see, in Rings of Power Season 2, characters are either paper thin or just completely changed from the source material itself. Now, the biggest disappointment, how they doing Tom Bombadil, okay? Tolkien fans, know Tom Bombadil as one of the most enigmatic and, beloved characters in the entire lore itself. Now, he's this ancient, powerful figure that I've told you all before, completely indifferent to the struggles of men, elves, and even the One Ring. But what did J.D. Payne and Patrick McKay do in Rings of Power Season 2? They turned him into a goofy, shallow caricature of himself instead of being a mysterious force of nature. He's been reduced to comic relief in Rings of Power Season 2, or at least we see that so far. But it's a slap in the face to the fans who understand the depth of this character. All right, and that should really say a lot right there. And it's not just Tom Bombadil in the Rings of Power Season 2. It's every character from Galadriel to Elrond. It has been basically dumbed down or changed into a political, scapegoat to fit this generic Hollywood-style storytelling. Galadriel, one of the most powerful and wise figures in Tolkien's lore, is portrayed as this arrogant, impulsive warrior in Rings of Power Season 2, as well as Rings of Power Season 1. And it's like they didn't even bother reading the books. These characters have been hollowed out to fit the showrunners as well as Jennifer Sarkey's warped vision, and the result is the characters that fans don't recognize or care about in Rings of Power Season 2, let alone the first season. Even the media is starting to admit that what we've known all along, Rings of Power Season 2 is just a disaster. When you've got shill outlets like Variety and other places, well, I want to say Variety, but shill outlets who usually bend over backwards to defend these kinds of projects, admitting that the viewership for Rings of Power Season 2 has tanked, it's bad. And they can't hide behind the usual excuses of toxic fandom or online trolls anymore. The numbers speak for themselves when it comes to Rings of Power Season 2 compared to Season 1. So why does all of this matter? Well, simply put, because it shows that no amount of money can fix bad storytelling. Amazon threw over $1 billion at Rings of Power Season 2, hoping to buy a success as HBO did with Game of Thrones. But when the foundation is this weak, all the special effects and the big name actors in the world can't save Rings of Power Season 2. Even Marvel failed at this kind of stuff. And fans want authenticity. They want respect for the source material. They also, and when you treat a beloved franchise like Lord of the Rings itself as a playground for modern day Hollywood trends, like we're going to see in War of the Royal Hero and in Rings of Power Season 2, fans are going to reject it. So basically, where does Rings of Power Season 2 go from here? Well, given the massive drop in viewership, it's basically hard to imagine a bright future for this show. You see, Amazon is going to have to decide whether to keep sinking money into a sinking ship or cut their losses with Rings of Power Season 2. Now, if they're smart, they'll hit the reset button and find new showrunners who actually respect Tolkien's work, or they'll go ahead and respect it themselves. But let's be real, Amazon's not going to be is not willing to admit failure that easily with Rings of Power Season 2. Now, the bigger issue is that this failure is part of a larger pattern we're seeing across Hollywood, as I stated before. These companies think they can stop a recognizable brand on a poorly written show or movie and just expect people to just eat it up. But audiences are actually waking up instead. And we've seen this with Star Wars. We've seen this with Marvel. We're not seeing it with Rings of Power Season 2. Now, people are also tired of, having their favorite franchises turn into political soapboxes or shallow cash grabs. All right. But we also got to be real here. In the end, Rings of Power Season 2 is a lesson on how not to adapt to a beloved source material. From this massive drop in viewership to the poor creative decisions by Payne and McKay, Rings of Power Season 2 has been nothing short of a disaster along with Season 1. And Amazon tried to buy success, but they failed because they didn't understand what makes Tolkien's world special when it comes to making Rings of Power Season 2. Now, you can't fake good storytelling, and you can't trick fans into accepting a bad product just because it has a familiar name. Okay? So what do you think? Will Amazon finally learn from this failure in Rings of Power Season 2, or will they just keep doubling down on the same mistakes? Because they got, 5 seasons of this. Let me know in the comments below. And also be sure to include any additional thoughts you might have on this particular topic. If you enjoyed what I shared in this video, go ahead, smash the like button, and share far wide across social media. And if you haven't done so already, and you enjoyed all the content in the video, go ahead, subscribe to the channel, click the bell notification so that way you're notified of future uploads and updates. Till then, peace.